Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I come from Indiana and ran a business for 37 years, logistics and distribution. It's been a big benefit to get engaged in conversations like this. Our company was so small for so long. You had duties to where you did everything in that business. For instance, CFO, CEO wasn't even a term we used until maybe 20 years ago, and I did it for 37. It was a blessing to have that practical kind of experience, especially when you get into a discussion here in the Budget Committee, and we're talking about climate. I view it as an issue that we definitely need to be engaged in on our side of the aisle. I started the Climate Caucus here when they had attempted to do that for many years. It is valid. Conservatives need to be involved with it, from young conservatives to farmers who are at the leading edge of what might be afoot, from evangelicals to Catholics. But then it gets down to the rubber meeting the road, because if I wasn't really good at Finance 101, I would have never succeeded in that business in the long run. Here we are, the biggest business in the world, and we do not do budgets anymore. We haven't done one that we've adhered to in 20-some years. We've got these big sweeping issues that the country looks to us to be at least civil in the discussion and then maybe come up with some stuff that works. I don't think borrowing now $1.5 trillion, soon to be $2 trillion a year, is a good business plan. Governor, you'd get run out of town with that approach in your own state. We got to do better. Since it's a budget hearing, I generally start there. Now I want to pivot to climate, which is a complicated discussion. My side of the aisle, when I got here, you mentioned climate, you'd clear the room. You mentioned things like tax pricing and so forth. Then you're going to get the mysterious texts, like have you gone to the dark side, stuff like that. We've come a ways there. But still, we're in the context of all solutions generally wanting to be crafted here, but we're in the worst place we've ever been as a country to really do it. And I would suggest that, Governor, many people that run budgets live within your means, that we should maybe be doing more of that in places where get things done. And you pay for it, and you don't borrow from future generations. I'm going to give you an example in my home state. 2 lakes that on the bottom end of one had an endangered mussel, okay? You had to make sure water flow was going to keep them alive. Well, as a consequence, it, through a couple drought years, drained the lakes by 10 feet. And the big stakeholders were not necessarily the mussels, not even the utility that had a small hydroelectric presence, and believe me, they wish they didn't have it on that lake. FERC and Fish and Wildlife. Can you imagine what that discussion was like in trying to actually have people that live there, the businesses that lived around those lakes as the main stakeholders, been wrestling for 10 years with that confluence of issues? Well, we heard about it. I'm a Main Street entrepreneur that knows how to get from here to there, and in a little over a year, we solved it. And the way we had to solve it was not by relying on this place or even the various interests working it out. We had to step in as a Senate office. And it took a little over a year and a half to get it to the finish line, but they've been wrestling with it 10 years. So I think the point I'm making here is a lot of what we need to do related to this discussion, permitting and so forth, probably is going to have to be enabled more through the dynamics of what work in this country. And that's not doing it from this place directed from the top down. Maybe if you'd start doing things where you're creating more results. You can't do everything there, and a lot of times these things get tangled up with the process in general. 10 years working on a simple thing where mussels were a concern. I'm a conservationist. Well, we got a different flow rate that was more than what the Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to do. FERC really was kind of an issue that complicated more than enabled. Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to maybe get some resolution, and we helped the people that had the most skin in the game. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Hergott, what do we do in terms of taking the complexity of these issues and maybe trying to do them in ways that are a little more entrepreneurial, get the job done, navigate through the federal morass, and actually start producing more results where we don't have overburdening regulations and we quit borrowing money from future generations for whatever your interest might be here?
Two quick things. First, there are always going to be conflicts between the natural environment and human activity, and it's a balance. There's always trade-offs. Our inability to recognize that we have to make risk-based decisions and that there will be take on species and there will be impacts on the environment, but we can mitigate those, is why we have the environmental review processes we do. They're not rhetorical tools to stop projects or increase costs. The second is there is a disconnect between what people are paying for their utilities and their services and how they got there. When I asked 2,000 state legislators on what the unit of measure is for electricity, water, gas, they don't even know what the unit of measure is, let alone how much it costs or how much of that is attributable to permitting delays or litigation or costs and restarts and penalty fees. Without that connection, without that recognition of a holistic approach of what it takes, we're always going to be at loggerheads with each other, with people with their own constituencies. I'm American Rivers, I don't like hydro. I'm this, I don't like this. And as a result, because we haven't figured it out up here, we allow all of the siloed, unique constituencies that everyone looks out for to command the airspace.
Thank you. Good answer. And if I'd have the latitude for one other quick question.
Keep it quick because we have another senator waiting.
Yes, I understand that. This was Monticello, Indiana, Lake Freeman, by the way, a very rural area. And my next question is for the governor. What have you done in your own state that would cut to the chase, solve some of these issues where we know that you get it done more quickly than oftentimes from here to the top down? You have an example or two that you'd want to cite?
Well, I've got one that Mr. Hergott was involved in, the largest ecosystem restoration project in our state's history, one of the largest in the country, and certainly the largest sediment diversion project ever undertaken is the Mid-Barataria project in the lower Mississippi River. The estimates initially were that that was going to be 12 to 15 years of permitting, potentially followed by litigation and so forth. Well, 5 years ago, we got started. Next month, we're going to break ground. It was on the dashboard. It received attention, and it was transparent. He helped usher it through the process. We had a lot of coordination among the federal agencies. And so I'm just going to, I believe in permitting reform, too, by the way. I co-chaired an effort with the National Governors Association with Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah. It is very bipartisan. Every governor in the country is concerned about this. It just simply takes too long now to do anything. But this is an example of how things can work. And so let's do more of what works and less of what doesn't work.
Touche. Kudos. Thank you.